Modern quality of life features. For big titles especially, it's important to make settings as user-friendly as possible. But I could end this right here by simply pointing you towards The Last of Us Part 1 and its extensive myriad options. They really are incredibly well crafted. Let's take a look. Today, I'll be doing this like a Let's Play, and taking a look at the options in the PlayStation 5 version of The Last of Us Part 1. The generous accessibility features in this series have been particularly eye-opening. Accessibility refers to design that makes a game more convenient and playable. It also refers to options that assist those with disabilities in playing a game. This game is a wonderful reference point, so let's see what we can learn from it. First up, we've got to start from the accessibility menu. Look at all these sub-menus. It also pulls in options from other menus, so there is a bit of overlap, but it's impressive all the same. Let's dig deeper. If I pick the magnification and visual aids sub-menu, I can change various settings such as HUD size. A HUD is the UI information that's overlaid directly onto the game screen. It stands for heads-up display. The right size for elements like these will depend on personal preferences and TV setups. It's great how they have this preview window that clearly shows what each option does. It's a quality of life feature within the quality of life features. Background brightness. It's a little hard to tell the difference here, but you can adjust this during the game too. Color. Colorblind mode is a great feature for those players who need it. Speaking of colorblindness, we also have high contrast display. By swiping the touchpad, players can make enemies, allies, and items display more clearly. Pretty amazing! There's also a screen magnifier button. This will be even more useful if the game ever ends up on handhelds like the Steam Deck. Next, the motion sickness menu. I'm sure quite a few of you experience motion sickness playing 3D games. By toning things down and making the screen feel less like it's moving, you'll reduce motion sickness, even if it means sacrificing presentation. Displaying a persistent center dot also works well to achieve the same goal. And while it may not work for everyone, motion sickness medicine might also help. Navigation and traversal. These options can provide hints about how to progress in the game. Arrows pointing towards your destination, for example. The player sees only a small part of the game world, and the more realistic the game is, the harder it can be to read the environment, so this can really help. Beyond that, this option can make the controller vibrate if you're about to fall off a ledge. This option enhances the listen mode you use to locate enemy positions, making them much easier to pick out. You can give yourself infinite breath, and you can even skip puzzles. And you can see, these options can have a big impact on difficulty. Next up, screen reader and audio cues. It'll read the text right off the screen. Let's try it out.
Left and right directional buttons. Change. Triangle button. Reset to defaults. Circle button. Back.
So it's reading the text at the bottom of the screen. This makes it so all text in the game can be voiced, not just dialogue. An incredible feature. The voice may be artificial, but they still had to make sure it all works right. Next, we have cinematic descriptions. Do they write out the sound effects? Or maybe they display text like wind howling instead. If you turn traversal audio cues on, the game will play a sound when you approach a place where you can jump or pick up an item. Combat audio cues, combat vibration cues, and the like also provide added sensory information. Let's take a look at this list of audio cues. Interesting. Various cues for various scenarios. Next is speech to vibrations. What's that? I wonder if it vibrates the controller, kind of like a body sonic. I experimented with this using the Nintendo Switch's HD Rumble, having vibrations that match the frequency of impact sounds, for example. Last, we have combat accessibility. This can keep enemies you've grabbed from breaking free, or stop your allies from getting grabbed. All of these options are locked, so they all probably lower the difficulty in some way. Requiring this extra unlock step is a great way to prevent players from accidentally changing certain options. Now, let's turn them on. This one's an invisibility toggle, a pretty amazing feature. If you hold the circle button, enemies won't be able to find you. By setting this to unlimited, you'll be almost invisible. But that's okay, because there's more to this game than just fighting your way to the end. This is a truly thoughtful feature. Other features like slow motion also have an impact on difficulty. There are plenty of options available, but for the sake of convenience, they also added accessibility presets. These let you change a whole slew of options all at once. They really covered all their bases. I've explained a lot here already, and those were only the features included in the accessibility menu. There are plenty of standard options too. Let's start with the controls menu. As you can see, this is the DualSense controller. By picking customized controls, we can change all sorts of things. This option lets you give your custom control settings a name. We do the same thing in Smash Bros., although in our case, it's because lots of players might be switching in and out. Now take a look at this. You can choose to hold the controller sideways or upside down. There are some real acrobatics going on here. You'll end up disoriented if you set this by accident. Best be careful. This one lets you swap functionality for the left and right sticks. I'm sure there are players out there who appreciate this feature. To change controls, you have to hold the button. They don't swap immediately. Like this. You can also assign actions to the directional buttons, which is why long presses confirm changes, so that short presses can navigate the menu. Look at how they show you the default button for unconfigured controls. It's shown to the left of the heading. This way, players can revert things to how they were if they get mixed up. General controls cover standard movement, but that's not all we have. There's also aiming, swimming, minigames. You can even adjust the controls for navigating the menu. It must have been a lot of work to bring all this together. I'm sure it was complicated. They also have detailed settings specific to the DualSense controller. Adaptive triggers, for example. Or bow resistance, which provides haptic feedback through the triggers when drawing your bow. And look at all the vibration settings. A toggle for cinematic vibrations is crucial if your game has lengthy cutscene sequences. Have you ever set your controller down on the table, only to have it go brrrr when something happens in a cutscene? You can greatly customize the HUD, too. This includes some settings I didn't touch on before, such as different reticles, which you use to aim. There are all sorts of options here. Some of these are graphical aids to help explain, which is a wonderful touch. On to subtitles. Pay attention to Joel's dialogue down at the bottom. You can make it bigger, or smaller if you want. It's a bit tough to see what the background setting does here, but you can always change it during the game to compare the different options. Names on or off. Having names on is a nice way to remember who's who in the game. But it can make it harder to read, so you're able to color the names too. You can also show where a voice is coming from. In this case, Joel would be speaking from the left. You can even change the color of the entire subtitle. Next, display settings. Rendering mode lets you choose whether to prioritize nice graphics or smooth performance. I have a feeling a lot of people would pick performance here. The next option is locked out because I'm using a capture card. But if your TV supports it, you can enjoy the game at a high frame rate. I can't enable HDR either because of the capture card. But it's great how they show both a dark scene and a bright scene on the brightness setting screen. You can compare it with the standard background too. Next, we have audio. Even when developers put a lot of effort into audio options, they often won't make more than these top 4. I have music turned off while I take this footage, by the way. With all the game's accessibility features, there are a few options related to those too. Here we have dynamic range. There are a number of balance presets, like what you would find on a soundbar. And that's all I have to show you today. It's truly amazing how much they were able to accomplish. With early Nintendo products in particular, there was some value in sticking to a set control scheme that couldn't be remapped. But controllers these days aren't as simple as they used to be. And players are coming into these games with diverse mindsets and experiences, so it's necessary to let them set the game up however they like. The Last of Us Part 1 handles this extremely well. I'm sure we'll see more products like this as time goes on. Even if you pick out only the features you need, it'll certainly provide a great learning experience. English dubbed by Nabil Mohari.